Some of these people have been in death row for over 2 decades, and May 2025 brought an end to the waiting. Here are all the inmates that were executed in the month of May 2025, their crime, how they received their sentence, and their last word. These stories will have you caught between believing in justice and sympathy for these prisoners. Number 1. Roshdi Abdullah Altway. In Singapore, justice is swift and unforgiving. But this one man defied the odds not once, but twice, but this time, his luck ran out. In 1993, Roshdi, a 34-year-old salesman, committed a crime that shocked the nation. He brutally killed Inspector Rajab Mohammed of the Central Narcotics Bureau, using a granite mortar as a weapon. Claiming self-defense, Roshdi argued he mistook the officer's actions as a threat. This was a grievous crime and he was sentenced to death. On appeal, his sentence was reduced to manslaughter, earning him a 10-year prison term. Additionally, he received 6 years and 12 strokes of the cane for illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition. This looked like life giving him a second chance. 16 years were enough for him to think over his life, but clearly he didn't. Released in the early 2000s, Roshdi had a chance to rebuild. But it didn't take him long to get into trouble again. By 2007, he was back behind bars, this time for trafficking Subutex tablets and drug consumption. The court handed him a 12-year sentence and 10 strokes of the cane. After serving 2/3 of his sentence, Roshdi was paroled. A normal person would have done everything to stay away from trouble this time, but not with Roshdi. In 2016, Roshdi was arrested for trafficking 78.77 grams of diamorphine, quantity that mandated the death penalty under Singaporean law. He claimed he was merely safeguarding the drugs, but the court found otherwise. In 2020, he was sentenced to death once more. Luck was also tired of fighting for him, so this time he was left on his own. On April 3, 2025, Roshdi received his execution notice. He filed a final appeal, but it was swiftly rejected. In his final hours, he was granted the customary last meal and allowed to make final arrangements. Roshdi didn't succeed to escape this time. So finally, on May 23, 2025, Roshdi was led to the gallows. With no further words, he faced the consequences of a life marked by repeated transgressions. Number 2. Jeffrey Glenn Hutchinson. On May 1, 2025, the state of Florida carried out the execution of 62-year-old Jeffrey Glenn Hutchinson, a Gulf War veteran, whose life easily went from military honor to a tragic end. Convicted for the 1998 shotgun murders of his girlfriend and her 3 young children, Hutchinson's case stirred debates over mental health, justice, and the death penalty. It all happened over 20 years ago. On the night of September 11, 1998, Jeffrey Glenn Hutchinson turned a quiet Florida home into a scene of unimaginable horror. What prosecutors described as a violent domestic dispute, Hutchinson armed himself with a 12-gauge shotgun and carried out a cold-blooded massacre. He first shot and killed his girlfriend, 32-year-old Renee Flaherty, before turning the weapon on her 3 children, 9-year-old Jeffrey, 7-year-old Amanda, and 4-year-old Logan, each gunned down in separate rooms of the house. Investigators later described the crime scene as one of the most chilling they had ever encountered. The children were found sprawled in their pajamas, executed with precision, as if no one was meant to survive. Hutchinson then called 911 and chillingly confessed, "I just shot my family," before being found by deputies sitting calmly in the garage, gunshot residue still on his hands. Who commits such an act and calls police on himself without clearing any evidence? Definitely a mentally troubled person. Most people raised concerns about post-war trauma. In 2001, Hutchinson was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder. He received a life sentence for Flaherty's murder and death sentences for the children's murders. Throughout his trial and subsequent appeals, Hutchinson maintained his innocence, claiming that 2 unknown assailants were responsible and that he was targeted due to his activism concerning Gulf War illnesses. His defense argued that he suffered from Gulf War syndrome, post-traumatic stress disorder, and paranoia, which impaired his mental state. However, multiple appeals were denied, with courts finding him competent and responsible for the crimes. On the evening of May 1, 2025, Hutchinson was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison. Witnesses reported that he declined to make a final statement, but appeared to mumble quietly as the procedure began. His legs shook, and he experienced brief spasms before being pronounced dead at 8:15 p.m., approximately 15 minutes after the injection commenced. For his last meal, Hutchinson requested a seafood platter consisting of salmon and mahi-mahi, accompanied by asparagus, a baked potato, and iced tea. Hutchinsons Execution is among the 4 executed in Florida in 2025 and the 15 nationwide this year. The case reignited discussions about the death penalty, especially concerning veterans with mental health issues stemming from combat experiences. While justice was served in the eyes of the law, the tragedy left an indelible mark on the community and raised questions about the support systems in place for those who serve in war. Next on our list is Glenn Edward Rogers. On May 15, 2025, Florida executed Glenn Edward Rogers, an extremely nice-looking man whose charm masked a deadly intent. Nicknamed the Casanova Killer, Rogers left a trail of victims across the United States, culminating in a decades-long pursuit of justice. In November 1995, 34-year-old Tina Marie Cribbs met Glenn Rogers at a bar in Gibsonton, Florida. Unbeknownst to her, this encounter would be her last. 2 days later, Cribbs was found stabbed to death in the bathtub of a room at the Tampa 8 Inn, a room rented under Rogers' name. Her personal belongings were missing, and her car had vanished. That was the first signal that raised eyebrows on Rogers. Rogers was apprehended in Kentucky, driving Cribbs' stolen vehicle. He claimed she had lent him the car, but evidence told a different story. In 1997, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Rogers' crimes were not confined to Florida. In September 1995, he murdered Sandra Gallagher in California, leaving her body in a burning car. He received a second death sentence for this crime in 1999. Authorities suspect Rogers in several other homicides across multiple states, though he was only convicted of 2. At one point, he claimed responsibility for up to 70 murders, a claim later recanted. After nearly 3 decades on death row, Rogers was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison. He was pronounced dead at 6:16 p.m. In his final moments, Rogers addressed his family and the victims' families, offering a cryptic message. "I know there's a lot of questions that you need answers to. I promise you in the near future the questions will be answered, and I hope in some way it will bring you closure." He concluded with a political statement. "President Trump, keep making America great. I'm ready to go." This last message has left so many people more worried about what he meant by "in the near future." Is there something people should be worried about? Was he working for someone? How will this truth ever be revealed when he's finally gone? Other people say it was just a way to emotional manipulate people to a rethink. For his last meal, Rogers requested a combination of comfort foods: pizza, chocolate cake, and soda. This choice stood in stark contrast to the violent crimes that led to his conviction and eventual execution. Rogers' death seems to have raised more questions than his living. Number 4, we have Matthew Lee Johnson. On May 20th, 2025, exactly 13 years after a heinous crime that shocked Texas, Matthew Lee Johnson was executed by lethal injection. His journey from a troubled past to a death chamber serves as a grim reminder of the consequences of unchecked violence. On the morning of May 20th, 2012, 76-year-old Nancy Harris, a great-grandmother and longtime convenience store clerk, was opening the store in Garland, Texas. Matthew Johnson entered, doused her with lighter fluid, and set her ablaze before stealing money from the register. Despite her severe injuries, Harris managed to describe her attacker to the police before succumbing to her wounds days later. Her death made it more painful for everyone, and the law took it as a commitment to find Johnson. Finally, they found him. Johnson was arrested shortly after the attack, still in possession of the stolen money. During his 2013 trial, he admitted to the crime, expressing remorse and attributing his actions to a drug-induced state. His defense did very hard to protect him by blaming it on drugs. They highlighted a history of drug addiction and childhood abuse, but the jury was having any of that. They sentenced him to death. As is usually the case with those on death row, Johnson spent each day waiting for his final day, but it didn't come till 13 years later. On the evening of May 20th, 2025, Johnson was executed at the Huntsville unit. In his final statement, he addressed Harris's family, seeking forgiveness and expressing hope for redemption. He was pronounced dead at 6:53 p.m., 26 minutes after the lethal injection began. Matthew Lee Johnson's execution closed a painful chapter for Nancy Harris's family and the community. Her memory endures as a testament to resilience and the pursuit of justice. Number 5, Oscar Franklin Smith. On May 22, 2025, Tennessee carried out its first execution in 5 years, ending the life of 75-year-old Oscar Franklin Smith, convicted of a brutal triple homicide in 1989. Smith's execution reignited debates over the death penalty, justice, and the potential for wrongful convictions. On October 1, 1989, Judith Smith and her 2 teenage sons, Chad and Jason Burnett, were found murdered in their Nashville home. Judith had been shot and stabbed. Chad was shot multiple times. Jason was stabbed repeatedly. Oscar Smith, Judith's estranged husband, became the prime suspect, especially after it was revealed he had taken out life insurance policies on all 3 victims. Witnesses testified that Smith had previously threatened to kill Judith and her sons after serious family quarrels. A bloody palm print at the crime scene, missing the same 2 fingers Smith had lost, further implicated him. Smith was convicted in 1990 and sentenced to death. Over the years, he maintained his innocence, citing new DNA evidence and alleged flaws in the prosecution's case. In 2022, his execution was temporarily halted due to issues with the lethal injection protocol. Despite ongoing legal challenges and appeals, the courts upheld his conviction and sentence. Beyond the courtroom and headlines, Oscar Franklin Smith's personal life painted a picture of a man caught between troubled relationships and attempts at redemption. Before the murders, Smith had worked as a machinist and was known by some in his community as quiet but quick-tempered. His marriage to Judith had been rocky, marked by domestic disputes and eventual separation. He was a father not only to Judith's sons but also to other children from previous relationships, some of whom stood by him throughout his incarceration. Over the years on death row, Smith reportedly found religion and spent time writing letters and reflecting on his case. Former prison chaplains described him as engaged and thoughtful, though never at peace with his conviction. His family, divided between those who believed in his guilt and those who maintained his innocence, rarely spoke publicly, preferring to grieve and process away from the media spotlight. On the morning of May 22, 2025, Smith was executed at the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution. He declined to choose his method of execution, resulting in the default method being used. His final meal consisted of hot dogs, tater tots, and apple pie with vanilla ice cream. In his final moments, Smith proclaimed, "I didn't kill her," referring to his estranged wife. He also criticized the justice system, stating, "Somebody needs to tell the governor the justice system doesn't work. Too many of us are being killed for someone else's deeds." Family members of the victims expressed a mix of relief and sorrow, emphasizing the enduring pain caused by the murders. The execution of Oscar Franklin Smith closed a chapter on a decades-long legal saga. Yet it also reopened discussions about the death penalty, the possibility of wrongful convictions, and the complexities of seeking justice. The final person on our list is Benjamin Donnie Ritchie. On May 20, 2025, Indiana carried out its second execution in 15 years, ending the life of 45-year-old Benjamin Donnie Ritchie. Convicted of the 2000 murder of Beech Grove police officer William Bill Toney, Ritchie's execution reignited discussions about justice, mental health, and the complexities of the death penalty. On the evening of September 29, 2000, Ritchie and 2 accomplices stole a white van from a gas station in Beech Grove, Indiana. Later that night, Officer Matthew Hickey spotted the stolen vehicle and began to pursue it. Joined by officers Robert Mercuri and William Toney, after a brief chase, the van stopped, and Ritchie fled on foot. Officer Toney pursued him, and during the chase, Ritchie turned and shot Toney 4 times with a 9mm Glock handgun, with 1 bullet piercing above his bulletproof vest, resulting in his death. Ritchie was arrested the following day at a friend's home. In August 2002, Ritchie was convicted of murder and other offenses. During the trial, he reportedly laughed upon hearing the verdict. On October 15, 2002, he was formally sentenced to death. Officer Toney's widow addressed Ritchie in court, expressing her belief that he was unremorseful and stating her hope that he would be miserable until his execution. Over the years, Ritchie filed multiple appeals, citing ineffective legal representation and cognitive impairments due to fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, childhood lead exposure, and bipolar disorder. Despite these claims, the Indiana Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court denied his appeals. In May 2025, the Indiana Parole Board unanimously recommended against clemency, and Governor Mike Brown upheld this decision. In the early hours of May 20th, 2025, Richie was executed by lethal injection at the Indiana State Prison. The process began shortly after midnight, and he was pronounced dead at 12:46 a.m. for his last meal. Richie chose the tour of Italy from Olive Garden. In his final moments, Richie expressed love and support for his family and friends, stating, "I love my family, my friends, and all the support I've gotten. I hope they all find peace." In the chase of justice, these stories reveal the chilling truth about the weight of a final sentence. From Singapore to the American Midwest, each name on this list carried with it a legacy of pain, remorse, or sometimes silence. While the world may move on, the victims' families, the convicted, and the societies that carried out these executions are forever marked. These aren't just criminals or headlines, they're complex human stories at the edge of law and life. As we reflect on these cases, we're left to ask, does justice end with death, or does the real reckoning begin after the death pronouncement? If you would like to have more documentaries on crime issues around the world, like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you never miss any of our daily uploads.